The House of Representatives just delivered a stunning blow to President Trump's trade agenda, voting 219 to 211 to overturn his controversial tariffs on Canada, with 6 Republicans breaking ranks to side with Democrats. This measure, while facing long odds in the Senate and a likely veto from the White House, signals growing cracks in GOP unity just months into Trump's second term, as lawmakers from trade-dependent states like Washington and Pennsylvania cite the economic fallout hitting farmers, manufacturers, and consumers hard. President Trump fired back on Truth Social, warning the defectors they will seriously suffer the consequences come election time, while boasting that tariffs have slashed the trade deficit by 78%, pushed the Dow to 50,000, and bolstered national security. Those 6 Republicans, Representatives Dan Newhouse of Washington, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Jeff Hurd of Colorado, Kevin Kiley of California, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, and Don Bacon of Nebraska, represent districts vulnerable to higher costs from duties on Canadian lumber, steel, and auto parts that everyday Americans are now paying at the pump and the checkout line. House GOP leaders had blocked similar votes for months, but the restriction expired in January, forcing the showdown amid mounting pressure from businesses and voters feeling the pinch of retaliatory measures from Ottawa. Economists note these tariffs, imposed unilaterally without congressional approval, have collected $200 billion so far this year, but at the cost of inflated prices and strained alliances, with Canada now mulling countermeasures that could hammer U.S. exports. This tariff revolt comes as the U.S. economy shows surprising resilience, with employers adding 130,000 jobs in January, well above expectations, keeping unemployment low and proving the labor market's strength despite policy turbulence. Yet beneath the headline gains, sectors like manufacturing face headwinds from Trump's protectionist push, including a new rule barring green card holders from Small Business Administration loans, limiting aid to citizen-owned businesses only. 4 Democratic-led states have sued the administration over $600 million in withheld public health funding, arguing it violates congressional intent, while the Pentagon stakes a 10% share in a new Tennessee zinc smelter to secure critical minerals away from China reliance. Shifting to the immigration front, where Trump's mass deportation campaign dominates headlines, federal courts continue to throw up roadblocks, with judges halting indefinite detentions and transfers of former death row inmates to supermax facilities, calling the processes a sham. In Minnesota, a federal judge denied state officials' bid to block a surge of ICE agents, but the operation has sparked outrage after cases like the hospitalization of a child migrant with a life-threatening respiratory illness and the release of families following lawsuits by the ACLU. Tom Homan, head of border operations, pulled 700 agents from the state amid pushback, signaling a softer touch in some areas, while over 300 anti-ICE protests erupted nationwide and cities like Chicago probed federal agents for illegal tactics. Attorney General Pam Bondi faced brutal grilling in House hearings over the Justice Department's handling of Jeffrey Epstein files, with Democrats accusing her of spying on search histories and orchestrating a cover-up by releasing only 3 million of 6 million mandated documents, photos, and videos. Bondi called a related court ruling a huge legal win, but critics like Rep. Jamie Raskin charged the partial disclosures shield powerful figures, fueling conspiracy theories as Ghislaine Maxwell prepares to testify before the House Oversight Committee. Meanwhile, Bondi clashed with Democrats during testimony on Epstein and other matters amid reports of a high-profile House Democrat alleging surveillance while reviewing the files. These immigration enforcement blitzes have led to nearly 1,000 arrests nationwide, with voluntary departures spiking as detainees like Vilma Palacios opt to leave rather than fight cases. Pushback includes body camera mandates for DHS funded by tens of millions, a shift from Trump's initial cuts, and Senate hearings today where Minnesota officials and immigration agency heads testify on citizen deaths linked to operations. Trump's new military executive orders reshape the armed forces, banning transgender service members as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth vows rapid compliance. On the economic ripple effects, Trump's deregulation rolls back federal oversight of greenhouse gases from cars, trucks, and power plants, while fast-tracking data center permits for AI dominance despite local homeowner concerns. The House rebuked tariffs amid AP top stories highlighting Bondi's clashes and a Canada shooting suspect identification, underscoring how trade fights intersect with border security narratives. Republicans and Democrats slipped new staffing mandates into recent funding bills for agencies like the National Weather Service and Education Department, countering Trump's cuts and ensuring operations at Biden-era levels. President Trump also ripped a U.S. Olympian skier on Truth Social calling Hunter Hess a real loser for disavowing national representation at the Winter Games, drawing rare GOP criticism, including from Sen Tim Scott, as the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. This comes as Democrats flip seats in Texas special elections, picking up a state Senate position and congressional seat, testing Trump's hold on the party. The Epstein saga deepens with over 3 million pages released by the Justice Department, including details on a missing minute in jail video from his death night, while a federal class action alleges aggressive ICE tactics against Latino families. Bondi's tighten grip post-files fallout includes appointing a new FBI co-deputy director amid tensions with Dan Bongino, who hinted at resignation. As tariffs threaten Trump's favorite economic weapon in court fights, the EU demands respect after 50% threats, and states sue over EV charging funds cuts. Trump's election security director, Kurt Olson, an election denier, stands out even in a conspiracist administration. These threads trade rebellions, immigration court battles, Epstein opacity, and economic pivots paint a presidency under fire from within and without, with midterms looming. In Kentucky, factory closures at Ford's battery plant lay off 1,600, blamed more on Trump gutting EV support than the company itself. Indiana Senate rejects Trump's redistricting demands, showing state-level resistance. Pharma marketers eye Trump impacts, as Hims and Hers faces scrutiny and drug makers sidelined. This chapter sets the stage for escalating tensions across these fronts, where policy clashes risk broader fallout. President Trump's deportation machine shows no signs of slowing, with over 500,000 removals logged in the first year alone, a figure that has reshaped communities from New York to Texas and ignited fierce legal battles across the federal courts. Immigration and Customs Enforcement reports hundreds of removal flights weekly, bolstered by tens of billions in new funding, expanded expedited removals without hearings, and Homeland Security task forces deployed in all 50 states to target cross-border crime. A federal appeals court handed the administration a major win last week, upholding the policy of indefinite detention for millions of undocumented immigrants, even long-term residents, without bond hearings, rejecting claims it violates due process. These operations have drawn widespread backlash, including over 300 protests in sanctuary cities like Chicago and New York, where ICE raids nabbed 178 Venezuelans at a Guantanamo Bay camp, 177 of whom were swiftly deported after criminal record checks. High-profile tragedies, such as U.S. citizen deaths in custody and a Minnesota child's hospitalization from respiratory failure during a raid, prompted Senate hearings where officials defended the softer touch now in play, pulling agents from resistant areas. The ACLU and others sued successfully in spots, securing releases for families and body cam mandates funded by DHS, but Trump's emergency border declaration enables military involvement, broadening enforcement to asylum seekers, whose claims USCIS now fast-tracks to denial, turning legal workers deportable overnight. Attorney General Pam Bondi remains at the epicenter of fury over the Epstein files, grilled relentlessly in congressional hearings where Democrats demand the full 6 million documents, including videos and photos, accusing her of selective releases that protect elites. Bondi touted a court ruling as a huge legal win, but faced subpoenas for Maxwell's testimony and misconduct complaints against judges blocking Venezuelan gang deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. Her February Fox claim of Epstein's client list on her desk allegedly naming blackmail victims has unraveled, with DOJ memos finding no evidence of such a list, no blackmail proof, and only 10,000 videos, images of abuse material, mostly stills of Epstein himself. This fallout saw Bondi vanish briefly amid MAGA backlash. Elon Musk tweeted jabs like, "Where is it? Oh, it's gone," before re-emerging to appoint a new FBI co-deputy alongside Dan Bongino, who hinted at quitting over the handling Republicans like Rep. Thomas Massie push bills for full disclosure, for justice and transparency. While Bondi shifts focus to drug busts and crime stats on Fox, declaring the issue over. The House oversight eyes more probes post-recess as partial drops fuel theories, despite DOJ insistence no prominent names emerge beyond known associates. Tariffs amplify the chaos, with the House vote exposing GOP fractures as Trump's 30% levies on Mexico and EU goods set for August 1 unless deals materialize spark countermeasures and investor jitters. Mexico decries the hits on its $840 billion two-way trade, blaming them on immigration and drugs, while EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen warns of supply chain hits and proportional retaliation. Canada faces 35% threats after the failed House override, with Trump eyeing 20 to 50% across 23 nations like Japan and Brazil, plus 50% on copper, atop steel, aluminum, and auto duties. These policies claim credit for economic bright spots. January added 130,000 to 250,000 jobs unexpectedly, unemployment dipping to 4.3%, with BLS tweaks incoming to reflect migration curbs. Yet inflation lingers at 2.7% CPI, above Fed's 2% goal, straining budgets as tariffs inflate costs. Economists peg 2026 cooling to 2.4%, but warn of hiring slowdowns from trade wars and immigration clampdowns. Tax cuts may boost jobs later, but factory closures like Ford's Kentucky EV plant blamed on subsidy cuts axed 1,600 roles, hitting Rust Belt voters. White House touts deportations as improving Americans' quality of life, liberating jobs and wages, but critics highlight labor shortages in ag and construction. Fed holds rates at 3.5 to 3.75% amid stability signals, though consumer confidence wanes on affordability woes. Trump's Olympian dislabeling skier Hunter Hess a real loser for skipping national pride drew rare rebukes from allies like Sen. Tim Scott as racist amid Texas Dem flips signaling midterm peril. Deregulation accelerates. EPA rolls back car, truck emissions rules, fast-tracks AI data centers despite NIMBY fights, and Pentagon grabs 10% in Tennessee's zinc for China-proof supply. States sue over $600 million health fund holds, while staffing mandates preserve Biden-era levels at weather and education agencies. Bondi's DOJ clashes extend to judges via complaints, as Epstein memo notes a missing minute in suicide video, stoking suspicions. India's farm strikes protest U.S. trade deals, tying into global tariff ripples, as Trump's copper play secures minerals. Pharma watches warily, with affordability in crosshairs. These converging crises, deportation deaths, file stonewalls, tariff rebellions, job teeters threaten to define the term's early arc. National security takes center stage in the Trump White House with the release of the 2026 National Defense Strategy, restoring peace through strength for a new golden age of America, which marks a radical pivot from decades of globalist policy toward homeland defense, border security, and burden sharing with allies. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's blueprint cites President Trump 47 times, slamming prior strategies for weakness, expanding military roles to include narcoterrorism and illegal immigration, alongside missile defense, cyber, and counterterrorism. This hemispheric focus pressures NATO partners to foot more bills, warns of simultaneity threats from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea acting in concert, and integrates border ops with battlefield readiness. Executive orders since day one embed these shifts. Troops at the border for drug interdiction, task forces hunting Tren de Aragua gangs under the Alien Enemies Act, and Pentagon investments like 10% stakes in domestic critical minerals production to break China chains. The strategy boasts rebuilt readiness, modernized weapons, and supply chain security, claiming unmatched superiority to deter foes while allies step up. Critics call it isolationist, but backers hail the urgency after 4 years of extremism and deadly failures. Federal courts deliver mixed verdicts on this aggressive agenda, with a landmark appeals court greenlighting indefinite migrant detentions, sans bond hearings, empowering ICE amid over 1,000 lawsuits, but clearing a path for mass removals. Yet roadblocks persist. Judges halt Alien Enemies Act use against Venezuelan gangs as overreach, block military perimeters in LA under the Posse Comitatus Act, and strike troop assists in domestic enforcement. The Supreme Court looms large, with 225 judges ruling against admin moves in 700 cases, from deportation tactics to grant cuts, testing constitutional bounds. Attorney General Bondi navigates DOJ firestorms, appointing U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton to probe Epstein's alleged ties to Clinton, J.P. Morgan Chase, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, and others at Trump's direct order via Truth Social. Trump framed it as countering the Epstein hoax distraction from Dem failures, but emails naming him 1,600 times in House releases drew accusations of deflection from his own past links. Bondi launched the FBI-led inquiry post-files, despite internal reviews finding no prosecutions viable, no client list, and limited new evidence beyond abuse materials. Social fallout from deportations ripples nationwide, separating families, spiking mental health crises, and deterring eligible immigrants, even U.S. born kin from services like health and schools due to fear. Communities report heightened anxiety, with research from Trump's first term showing lasting trauma, reduced program use, and household income drops. Economically, mass removals threaten labor shortages in agriculture, construction, and services, pressuring wages down for remaining workers, slashing tax revenue, and shifting billions to detention costs over growth investments. Tariffs compound the strain, with 60% of Americans disapproving hikes that inflate prices on imports from Mexico, EU, Canada disrupting $840 billion U.S.-Mexico trade, and risking recessions abroad that could spur more migration. Pew polls show broad opposition as everyday costs rise on autos, steel, lumber, while retaliation hits U.S. exports, farmers hardest. States warn of inflation spikes, productivity dips, with Mexico eyeing counters that could boomerang. Investigations proliferate. House oversight pushes Maxwell testimony, full Epstein disclosure bills gain bipartisan traction, and Trump's election security pick, a denier, raises alarms even among MAGA. Climate suits brew as states target federal judicial center over guidance, tying into dereg pushes. Military bans on trans service roll out swiftly as Hegseth vows compliance amid readiness rebuilds. Broader probes ensnare. DOJ indicts ex-FBI's Comey and James via Bondi appointee, sparking vacancy fights and district judge clashes. White House Situation Room huddles thwart discharge petitions on files, flashing select docs to GOP holdouts like Rep. Boebert. ABA sues over grant terminations as retaliation for anti-Trump stances alleging First Amendment violations. These security court social knots tighten policy nooses, with economic drags from enforcement fueling voter discontent as midterms near. Trump's playbook demands allies pay up, foes face strength, but domestic divides deepen amid human costs and legal gauntlets. Republicans brace for a brutal 2026 midterm reckoning, with special election flips in Texas handing Democrats a state Senate seat in a House district, spotlighting tariff backlash and deportation strains as Trump-endorsed candidates falter. President Trump's approval hovers in the low 40s per recent polls, fueling GOP anxiety as Democrats defend just 4 toss-up Senate seats while Republicans cling to slim majorities amid 18 seats shifting in Dem favor per Cook ratings. Trump vows to nationalize the midterms, pushing unified messaging on immigration and fraud, but insiders whisper frustration over his team's slow rollout, leaving candidates guessing on rally schedules and primaries. GOP strategists eye retaining Congress to shield the agenda, ramping candidate vetting to sideline non-MAGA bids and leveraging Trump's draw in red strongholds, where his numbers top 50% like past wins in Florida, North Carolina, Missouri. Yet swing states signal peril. Virginia and New Jersey drubbings echo 2018, where anti-Trump turnout surged, and analysts warn low-propensity MAGA voters must crawl over glass to offset independents' dissatisfaction. House defectors on tariffs face primary threats, as Trump labels them betrayers eyeing Election Day pain. Economic headwinds dominate the narrative, with Reuters. Economists forecasting 2.1% GDP growth in 2026, up slightly, but hampered by tariffs shaving 0.25 percentage points amid tepid 64,000 monthly job ads and unemployment climbing to 4.5%. Inflation sticks at 2.6%, tariffs adding 0.25 to 0.75 points, as Fed eyes just 0.5 more cuts post-December quarter-point trim, hitting neutral policy amid sticky prices. Goldman Sachs sees payrolls doubling to 70,000 monthly as tariff fades, and AI boosts productivity, but households groan under 2.7% CPI, climbs on groceries, gas, rent. Deportations exacerbate shortages. Agriculture loses 155,000 workers, 6.5% drop. Construction stalls in high immigrant states. Wholesale veggies soar from raids. Droughts. Fires. Dallas Fed notes Texas slowdown on policy uncertainty, curbing hires, investments. Industries beg for guest workers at lower wages, but UAF calls foul on labor shortage claims amid cut hours as deportations outpace replacements. White House touts quality of life gains, but EPI warns millions of jobs vaporize for immigrants and natives alike. Fraud crackdowns electrify the base. Trump launches DOJ's National Fraud Enforcement Division January 8, led by Senate, confirmed AAG reporting to him in Vance. Surging Minnesota probes after viral daycare scam video exposed Somali-linked schemes siphoning billions. FBI. deploys forensics on health, home care providers, possible terror ties, elected officials. DHS sends 2,000 agents door to door, 13 charged already in one building, doubling prosecutors. HHS Axes, $10 billion to 5 blue states, including Minnesota. SBA suspends 6,900 borrowers over $400 million fraud, banning disaster loans. This Minnesota maelstrom tied to Vance's presser expands nationwide, targeting public benefits, nonprofits, with multi-agency blitzes signaling zero tolerance for waste amid $7 trillion debt fight. Critics cry xenophobia, but admin frames it as saving taxpayer dollars for real Americans, boosting midterms pitch on draining the swamp. Protests swell, 300-plus anti-ICE rallies in sanctuary havens, farm strikes in India echo U.S. trade gripes, Olympian feuds alienate moderates. Pew finds 60% tariff thumbs down, affordability tops voter woes as veggies autos bite, Dems weaponize House probes, eyeing impeachment three-peat if control flips. Trump's shadow looms double-edged, asset in red bastions, anchor in purple battlegrounds where turnout crushes incumbents. Midterm maps favor defense, but policy drags tariffs, raids, cuts, test GOP grip as fraud winds rally the faithful. Economic teeters and fraud firestorms sharpen the stakes, with voters weighing gains against pains in this high-wire act. Midterm battle lines harden as President Trump previews a 2026 agenda heavy on reciprocal tariffs, mass deportations, and fraud purges, but economic drags and court curbs signal limits to his unchecked power. In a White House address, Trump touted manufacturing revivals, tax refund spikes, and border wins, urging voters to judge his record amid polls showing sagging popularity and GOP nerves over November control. Analysts forecast Democrats netting House seats via economic discontent. Voters rank affordability over immigration, while Republicans bank on fraud messaging and Trump's base turnout to hold Senate edges. Trade wars escalate. Trump holds August 1 deadlines firm for 30% EU. Mexico hits, eyes India 20% over surpluses, funding conflicts. After backing off Brazil, Argentina food duties amid retailer pushback. 7 partners inked frameworks, but Senate Dems invoke laws for full Epstein docs by August 15, tying probes to tariff leverage as global retaliation risks, recessionary migration surges. House resolutions target emergency declarations underpinning Canada, Mexico, China levies, with Senate echoes from October's bipartisan rebuke. Epstein saga simmers. Senate Dems force DOJ hand on withheld files. Trump deflects as old news while ordering probes into Clinton, bankers, elites. DOJ affirms suicide, no client list. But Maxwell looms. Bondi defends amid firings of Smith team prosecutors as partial releases 1,600 Trump mentions fuel bipartisan bills for total transparency. Deportation blueprint endures. Over 500,000 gone. Dallas Fed warns 0.8-point GDP shave from curbs, ag, construction crunches, but admin claims wage lifts. Security gains via task forces. Alien Enemies Act. Courts mixed detention. Okayed, but gang expulsions halted. Protests persist in Blue Havens. Shortages bite as guest worker pleas mount. Economic outlook tepid. iNotes, policy whirlwinds poised for more shifts. Reuters eyes 2.1% growth tempered by tariffs, 0.25 shave. Immigration drags. Fed Dallas pins deportations at near-point GDP hit. Job ads, modest 6.4K, 7.0K monthly. Unemployment 4.5%, inflation 2.6%. Sticky tax cuts buoy demand if Fed eases, but productivity AI boost needed to offset. Voters fume prices despite stocks. Shutdown fears amplify uncertainty. Security strategy sticks. 2026 NDS prioritizes hemisphere threats, ally burdens, narco borders. Hegseth integrates military minerals, self-reliance against China, simultaneity risks. Alliances hedge Trump's volatility. Putin, Xi chats test resolve on Ukraine, Taiwan. Rare earths pivot empowers partners. Fraud enforcement surges. New DOJ division doubles Minnesota probes. Indicts 13-inch scams. Axes billions to blue states, ties terror links. Rallies base for midterms. Dereg rolls, emissions gutted, AI centers fast-tracked, trans bans enforced, midterms loom as referendum, GOP schemes nationalize via Trump rallies, vetting, Dems ride economy, tariffs Texas, Virginia flips warn of waves, Trump confronts Xi twice, stabilizes China ties but decouples via allies, trade less aggressive if Dem gains-eyed. These trajectories trade brinkmanship, probe escalations, economic teeters, security pivots, forge a volatile year where midterm math decides if Trump's vision endures or fractures under voter verdict. Court reigns. global pushback